us to deliver another Webinar Wednesday. Hey, everybody, how the heck you doing this fine day? Steve Dotto here along with April. April's got the whole new office look going. That is awesome. And of course, I'm a little bit blurry here as I check my feed.
Hello.
So what a week it's been. So moments ago, just hours ago, of course, the World Health Organization declared this COVID-19 a pandemic. So the world we're in is a different world than it was before.
But everything's going to be okay.
Yes, I'm not saying everything's not going to be okay. You're absolutely correct there, April.
I know, but I feel like some people are freaking. So we got John from Erie, Pennsylvania. We have
Randy from Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Florida. We have Texas, Michigan, Minnesota, Australia, England.
Yeah, big group. There's Patty. We've got to earmark Patty there because Patty's going to join us a little bit later to chat with us about some of these virtual summit stuff. So is everybody a little bit shaken? I think it's a little bit surreal to be going live right now with just with the kind of everything happening. So I wondered, do you all feel like you're a little bit off kilter? Has your axis been slightly shifted by the world's kind of being held hostage at this point by this virus, and we're all trying to figure out exactly where we stand. What a time!
It's consuming.
Sorry?
I said I feel like it's consuming. It's consuming right now, like overwhelmingly consuming us.
Yeah. And Greg from is in the Toronto area. Is like SARS from years ago. Yeah, the Toronto area was really hit hard by the SARS virus, and it didn't spread. It wasn't as widespread, but they were definitely. Toronto was a changed city for several months as a result of that. Several other places were, of course, as well. But we had just as a complete personal aside, startling news here. Now I live in a small little village just south of Vancouver, and it's not public knowledge yet, but I know that a local dentist tested positive, meaning that for us, I expect, I can't imagine how much a dentist is going to be able to spread this kind of a thing, but I imagine fairly efficiently. So I fully expect that I will be in some sort of a quarantine situation here within a week. Wow. as our health authority gets a handle on it, reaches out to the people. But because they are trying to contain these things and restrict travel and all of those sorts of things. So it could be a. Now I was just thinking, am I in a better business to deal with this kind of thing? Because we can still, of course, deliver all of our content here. What our subject today is exactly about this situation. But what's the economic impact going to be? And obviously the personal impact, as many people will be affected. So it's going to be dramatic, and just I almost felt guilty, April, when we booked this. It was kind of like, oh, that'd be cute. Everybody's worried about this virus. Let's talk about video conferencing. And I didn't really realize at that point there just how each day the news would get a little bit more dire. But so I feel like almost like we're taking advantage of the situation by talking about this topic, but at the same time, it's our responsibility. And we are good at this. This is something that we know. We understand the world.
I agree, and I think that if anything, it's a great communication tool. Just with your family, some of the things that you show people and stuff, and gives you the ability to see the whites of people's eyes, as they say. So yeah, and it is scary. We have actually Bruce is from Venice, Italy, but he said he's hanging in there. So he said he's doing okay, because I know that they went down on official lockdown yesterday.
Yeah, the whole country, and for several months, and we're starting to see North American sporting events. The Golden State Warriors, which play in San Francisco, California, the basketball team, have announced that their next home game, will be to zero fans. They're going to actually not have any fans in the arena, and so I think that's going to become pretty much a major tennis tournament was just canceled here in North America. The San Jose Sharks are deciding what to do because their county has said no more gatherings of no more than 1,000 people at a time. So we're going to see it. We're going to see it moving ahead. Of course, major conferences. The Collision Conference in Toronto was just canceled. I think that was 20,000 people, and it's been shifted to virtual. South by Southwest, of course, one of the big ones. It was canceled. So it's going to be, I think we'll see an economic impact of this for a large period of time. Oh, there, Sylvia Cloutier, the World Skating Championships
That's crazy. Yeah.
in Montreal were canceled.
So Kurt was saying Chicago St. Patrick's Day parade here in the U.S. So was Boston. So was our local ones
Ireland
here.
canceled.
Yeah.
Ireland itself canceled all St. Patrick's.
You know what's interesting is that 9/11. So I mean, clearly it's two different things. But when 9/11 happened, and in the kids in the school, and I'm comparing it because I have children in school, you know, they did precautions of like emergencies and hiding under desks, and then and all of these things. And now this is clearly different in terms of virus. But what they're doing in the school systems is they're teaching the younger kids how to use Google Hangouts and all of these tools so they can do online learning, which is very different, but also be able to see their teacher and talk to their teacher online and have those resources. And that's what they're gearing up towards. And my 12-year-old came home today and he said, you know, Mr. Smelzner said that it's not like that it could happen. It's when it's happening, when the school closes down in the next week, even though we haven't been notified that they're officially closing down, but it's crazy.
Well, in most of North America, spring break is coming to the universities in 2 weeks. Is it that they start spring break, or next week?
Next week, and they're all the colleges are closing, and it's, you know, like my daughter, we just got notified today, but they're saying March 29th, but then they're also saying that's tentative, and that they might not actually go back to school this semester, because the concern is kids from all over the world go to her school, right? So people come back and you don't know where they're coming from, and then they have to be quarantined. They're almost actually better off staying at school to keep them in school at this point and not letting anybody on campus. But
well, yeah, but they don't have the resources to support them over the break.
They don't give you a credit, by the way, either. For your housing or your food plan.
There's going to be a lot of economic downturn. In Canada, the Prime Minister got on today and talked about a $1 billion package to allow for things like people who are let go or can't go to work. Unemployment benefits kick in immediately, as opposed to 2 weeks later. Those sorts of things. For 90% of the people on this call are entrepreneurs, though, and of course the world is going to do nothing to help us. We're just going to have to figure out things ourselves. I'm not bitter. That's going to be our situation. So so Jane said, moving online. Well, that's it. You know, all of the stuff that we're teaching about online business and building an online community, if anything, this is an affirmation that this is a, you know, at least it's not the perfect business, but it's isolated against some of these sorts of things. Income-wise, it's not isolated. Productivity-wise, we can still get our work done. We can still reach our community. We can still have our impact. Now, whether or not the financial wherewithal of our community to support the businesses and to continue to pay for our services is going to be there, that is another question for another time. And I have no idea how that's all gonna sort itself out. But I'd rather be in this business now than say have a restaurant. That's for darn sure, or own a sports franchise, unless it was a really cool sports franchise. Maybe I'd want to.
Making you a lot of money.
Yeah, but they've got a big headache, and we can we'll go on. Do we have somebody in there being a little bit rude in there?
People are not liking our conversation and they want to get started, but we're off to get started. But you know, patience is a virtue, friends. And it's good to have conversations. We're
8 minutes in. Normally we start about 6 minutes in. So if you're that keen to go, maybe you should wait for the replay and then fast forward. I probably have a little patience myself today. All right, so today's topic is we're going to be talking about video conferencing solutions on a variety of different aspects. So as per normal, I recorded a demo yesterday. Now the demo that I recorded has a couple of technical issues. Because we did some samples of different types of video conferencing tools, but when you're recording those in a screencasting tool, sometimes the audio works and sometimes it doesn't. So I did a little piece with April where part of it worked, but part of it, April, is kind of quiet, which is, there's some benefits there too. But so I edited it down. So it's a little bit choppy as far as what it is, but you'll be able to see it. So we're going to look at the main aspects of video conferencing. But before we do that, I want to ask you just where you guys all sit in the world of video conferencing. So the first question is, how do you feel about using video as opposed to other forms of communication? So would you prefer to meet face-to-face? Are you the sort of person that wants to communicate by email? or would you rather use the phone? If you're talking about meeting in business, we're not talking about family and personal meetings, but for business, like I prefer video conferencing. But are there other ones that you would prefer? And I realized as I put this forward that I had a flaw that I didn't ask him to prefer a video conference. I left it out. But most people prefer face to face. There we go. Like email. Some people, yeah. My real thing was I was wondering how many people like to use the phone, because I don't know about you, but I hate communicating by phone these days.
I think you find that definitely that's an option, but I will say I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and one of the things I was actually kind of talking about how I manage our community, and certain when we get questions and stuff, and if somebody's really having a hard time, I'll pick up the phone and call them, and they're oftentimes shocked that I've called them. They're like, oh, I thought this was all online and you guys are on video. But it makes a world of difference in a lot of ways, just having a conversation with somebody, because email can get, perceived as whatever. But yes, I would agree. My kids never answer the phone, nor does my husband. No one likes the phone in my house.
Well, there's an issue there. I mean, with all of the spam phone calls, which seems to be de rigueur today, I've actually changed. I don't answer the phone if I don't recognize the number. If you're not in my address book, I don't answer it. And my voicemail message says, if you're calling me and I don't know who you are, I'm never going to answer the phone. So you're going to have to either text me or email me in order to get in touch with me. But I'm not going to answer the phone. Or you can leave a message. But it's going to take. I'm slow to pick that up. So that's kind of the way that the world has gone. Our telcos have let us down big time as far as spam goes, as far as spam phone calls goes, the way that phone numbers get spoofed, etc. They had to have done a better job, but they didn't. So let's move on to our second poll here, because we actually have a poll that is even more relevant, which is what percentage of your current meetings. Can I do that now? There we go. Share now. There we go. What percentage of your current meetings are virtual? Like how much time are you spending in virtual calls? And look at that. The majority of people,
I don't know, it's like 25 to 50%.
Wow,
Looks like it's winning.
Evenly across the spectrum. Interesting.
I'm definitely at like 90% video calls.
Yeah, for me too. Absolutely. Okay, well, that's great. Okay, so let's. So we're going to be running about a 20-minute video looking at the different solutions. We've got a special guest that's going to join us later. Patty McGill is used to be the affiliate manager at Thinkific, but Patty has put on multiple virtual conferences. So we're going to be looking downstream at some of the bigger picture things. As the biggest, well, maybe not the biggest, but the impact that a lot of us feel most is: are we going to go to the conferences, and are we going to be going to the the large scale meetings that we used to go to, and how well can those be replaced? We know that face-to-face meetings, sales calls, conversations, teamwork can be pretty well replaced using video conferencing solutions. But what about those bigger conferences? What do we lose? What do we get? And how do they all come together? So we're going to talk to Patty about that once we get on the other side of the video. So I think we'll just do that now. We'll fire up the video, about 21 minutes. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot. It's a great big shout out and thanks to all of our patrons at Patreon who support us here at Dottotech. We're a community funded channel, and we need your support more than ever now with the way things are going. But we thank you all so much for your support. We'll talk a little bit about Patreon after the video runs, but just a great big thank you to everyone there. For all of you watching, if you have to jump off, if you're having any technical issues, a replay will be sent out tomorrow morning, and it will include all of the links to all of the different sites and tools that we talk about in today's webinar. So let us now jump in and let's take a look at our my video on conferencing solutions from kind of A to maybe H. Didn't quite all the way go to Z, but A to H.
All right, bye friends.
Oh my goodness, it seems like since we planned this webinar Wednesday, there has been just like a giant snowball of momentum building and growing on the importance of our topic, which is how we can remain productive at home, having different meeting technologies, online meeting technologies. And it all started when I thought, oh, this COVID thing is going to curtail some travel. I didn't realize that it was going to be just the accelerating story that it is. So I feel to be honest, I feel a little bit guilty that we might be kind of taking advantage of the situation with this webinar, but when we first booked this, it wasn't quite as big a story. So maybe it was a little bit prescient. So today what I want to talk about is technologies that we use in different ways that we present and we use video for communication. So we can stay home and still be effective, still be productive, still be communicating with a team. In many ways, what we've done here for the last 120 some odd episodes of Webinar Wednesday is a fine example of this exact technology. Each one of us sitting in our homes consuming, or our offices consuming the webinars that we produce here, that I produce from this little office and April produces from her office, and we're all able to stay home in a relatively sterile environment. I don't know what Farley's look today, but I'm sure it's not 100% healthy. But if travel does get curtailed, if we do reduce the amount of face-to-face contact that we have, how do we keep the lines open? So that's what we're going to be discussing today on Webinar Wednesday. Okay, this is Werby. I have just sent April an invitation. She has to go to her office. She wasn't in her office to come on with me right now. But this is this used to be called Appear.in, which was a product that we used for years for our internal team communications before we purchased Zoom. Now, the reason we use Zoom is we bought the commercial version of Zoom, and it integrates perfectly with Slack. So we're able to actually invoke calls right within Slack. So that's why it's kind of taken over. But about a year ago, Appear.in, I think that there was some licensing issues, and at any rate, it changed its name, and it became Werby. Now, there are paid versions of this, but this basic web-based version, which allows up to 4 people to jump in a conference room, is a terrific tool. Very reliable, and one that we've always enjoyed. Now, it's got a real maybe one of the reasons that I like it is it divides us into 4 quadrants on the screen, which very much feels like the old broadcast tool that we used for a long time called Blab. So it's got that kind of feel, but it's not being broadcast to the whole world. It's just an internal meeting. It works within your web browser. As I say, there's a free version and paid versions on top. But for simple small team meetings, it's exceptional. Now, if we take a look at the bottom, we can turn on and off our cameras and microphone here. We can do screen sharing, which I think is essential. We often screen share in internal communications, in internal meetings. And probably you want to screen share often in small meetings that you have with clients or with outsiders as well. A bonus here is you can record the meeting, which is a huge benefit. It's something that you typically wouldn't find in a free package. It also has a built-in chat. Now, the chat, most of these applications do have chat built in, but we don't typically use the chat feature when we're doing an internal call, an internal video conferencing call, because you want to have a record of the chat. It's because you're often sharing URLs or sharing links, that kind of stuff. So we move all of that chat conversation into Slack, where the chat is archived, so we can go back later on if we need to get access to any of the information that we were sharing in the chat. But if you are contacting an external client or somebody that's not part of your team, and so you don't have a communication tool like Slack to support yourselves, well, in that particular case, this chat would be great to use as well. So now it's just let's wait and see what the video quality is like as we chat with April. She hasn't seen this app yet, so I'm just kind of sprung it on her as we were preparing today's webinar. All right, so we have April joining us, and as usual, I just threw her under the bus, said, April, come on the call. I didn't tell her that we were recording for the webinar. So
Hi, guys.
I woke you up from a nap, April.
I think actually you did this to me, and I had the same sweatshirt on the last time you did this to me.
I don't remember. That's a nice one. So what is NFA?
NFA is Norwich Free Academy. It's my friend's high school.
There we go. All right, so now just are you getting? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine. Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, that mic's working well. All right. So do you remember Appear.in?
I do.
This is what they've morphed into. There was some change that had to happen to Appear, and this is the new Appear. It's called Werby.
Ah, very nice. Always good.
So we love it. So it's a we loved this app in the past. I mean, when we moved to Zoom, we never went back to it. But it's got all of the features that one would need to do a simple video conference. Up to 4 people in the room. We have always found this to be the most reliable of all the applications we use, haven't we?
We have, yeah. Yes.
We love this app in the past. I mean, when we moved to Zoom, we never went back to it. But it's got all of the features that one would need to do a simple video conference. Up to 4 people in the room. We have always found this to be the most reliable of all the applications we use, haven't we?
It's funny though how we
It
haven't
all,
used it in so long until this. This is cool. The quality is
yeah,
awesome.
it's almost a throwback to Blab days. But the quality, now I'm not sure that the quality is so good on this because they don't try and go full screen. What they do is they compress everything down a little bit so that it's so that because they're using the small quadrant screens. But it's so as you can see, if you're having a meeting, you've got the chat, you've got the ability to share screens. It doesn't have a whiteboard app, but it's basically got almost everything you would need to work remotely with a team.
I like it.
Thumbs up. All right, let's stick around, April, and let's jump into Zoom to take a look and talk about some of the differences in Zoom. Can you stick around for a minute?
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay, we'll jump on. Okay, bye. So what I'm going to do now is April has jumped off. I'm going to go over into our Slack channel. We're going to go into Zoom from Slack because Slack actually integrates with Slack. Slack actually integrates with Zoom. So you can see I can just type in the Zoom meeting here and it launches the meeting and allows everybody that's in the channel to just click to join. Now, Zoom launches an external player. That's one of the big differences between Zoom and the other tools that we looked at and are using is Zoom launches, for the most part, although you can use it in the browser, an external player, which gives it some tremendous advantages as far as its use of bandwidth, etc. But it's not quite as, in some businesses, it's more of a challenge to get it through the firewall because people can't, because your IT department has to give it permission to have access to different services. But most of you have probably used Zoom in the past. Zoom is very scalable. So for small intimate meetings to larger trainings you can do within Zoom. And Zoom also has a webinar module, which allows you to deliver full-on webinars. It's not my favorite tool for webinars, but it is probably my favorite tool for group training, for doing trainings with a small group. And it's the tool we use for all of our regular team-based video conferencing, and you would probably as well. I don't know if I would classify it as my favorite, but it certainly performs very well. We almost never have any issues with Zoom at all. Now, here comes April into the room right now. She's signing in with my account. Her name will appear properly in a few moments, but it looks like I'm signing in twice. So within Zoom, you can either have your video camera turned on or off, and if it's off, it's the avatar. Typically speaking, when we're doing our calls, April is on in video, regardless of what kind of a disaster her office happens to be, which looks really awesome right now, by the way. But Liz never gives us video. Liz is like the mystery woman. We have no idea what she's doing or even where she's connecting with us from. It's very true, is it not? So within Zoom, in the bottom of the window, you see all of the different tools that you have. Now, this is in the conferencing mode. Once again, you've got the ability to invite others into the room with you. As the host, I can manage participants. I can turn people's cameras on or off. Watch. Can I do that here? I can turn April's camera off.
Oh, and there's your picture.
Yes, isn't that nice? And now I can turn it back on again. Oh, maybe I can't. Can I turn it back on? Oh, ask to start video. That's nice. I give you permission to start video, so I can't actually turn the camera on and off, which is, if you think about it.
I need more frequently.
So, no, what? Turning my video off?
No, asking permission to turn the video on, so I at least know when you're recording.
Oh, well, you don't have to come in with video. You can come in without video if you choose.
I don't mind.
So once again, how we tend to use it, and how I think you'll primarily use it if you're using it in a team environment, is you won't use the chat, which is built in here. And the chat does a pop-up window. I don't think Zoom's chat is the greatest chat on the planet, as far as, because it just isn't super easily accessible in any of the forms. But having said that, we still use we'll always choose to have our chat and conversations in Slack. Zoom allows you to record all of your meetings and all of your webinars, and it gives you the ability to record them either to your local computer or to an online host. You can record it to the web as well, which is pretty convenient, especially if people can't make the meetings, etc. But it's the scalable nature of Zoom that makes it most appealing. It's the one tool that you can use for small team meetings like we have right here, right now, and scaling up to 2, 3, 4 people, For our small work sessions that we do with 12 to 20 people, it's ideal. You'll have a film strip here of all of your individuals, and you can turn on and off their cameras and microphones, and they can jump in on the call very elegantly. It's very easy to have multiple people participate. But you have to exhibit some degree of discipline with your group when you do that, because people have to mute their microphones, otherwise it gets pretty cacophonous as far as the noise level. Screen sharing is excellent. There is a whiteboard. Is there not a whiteboard there? I think there's a whiteboard here in Zoom as well. It's not something that we ever use. Share. Yeah, there it is. There's the whiteboard. We never use this, April. Look at that. Did you know we had this whiteboard?
I did. We haven't used it in a while, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're underutilized. The other thing too that in Zoom, I don't know, you can actually pick your background.
Oh yes, they've got a whole bunch of the abilities for you to filter out your background and choose your background. And it's something that there it is. Choose a virtual background. Shall we try it?
I think we should.
I'm going to give the Golden Gate Bridge as my virtual background. You choose another one too. Oh, there it is. So it does.
Mine. Weird.
It doesn't do a great. I think there's some.
Why am I doing that?
I don't know. Mine looks better than yours. I think if you have a fairly neutral background, that's a good virtual background. It's a clean office. That's something you've never been in. If we bring out, you can see how it's kind of working out who I am. But I do have some friends that use it, but typically speaking, they have a green screen in the background because we have such a busy background here in both of the certainly in my office here. How do I turn off that? Unpin. Just a minute. There we go. Because my background is so busy that it's very difficult for the tool to key out the background. However, if I did have, I know why yours is that. Is the blue shirt or the gray shirt is very similar to the color of the gray wall, so it can't differentiate between the two. So that's a simple look at Zoom. So I'm going to let April go now, and we're going to talk about some of the other tools. Before we leave Zoom, I think I'd like to spend a few minutes and show you the management console of Zoom. Now, I only have the Zoom, I think it's the professional package, which gives us meetings for up to 50 people, I believe is the limit. And so I don't actually have the webinar package, but if you want to organize meetings in a little more sophisticated way, I thought it might be well worth you taking a look at some of the options we have when we create a meeting. So this is our meeting schedule coming up. So we're using Zoom for a series of meetings coming up for our B-School Mastermind. You see all of them listed out here. So we've got login links and all of that stuff pre-planned for all of these. If I go to schedule a new meeting, these are the options you have within Zoom. Obviously, you can name the meeting, you give it a topic, give it a time, but then you can set it up as a recurring meeting. So if you have a regular team meeting with your team at X time every day or every week, you can set it up as a recurring meeting, and then all of the people who are registered for that will have an automatic notification. They'll know exactly where to go to log in to the correct meeting. So that's pretty nice. You can choose whether or not you want to have people have to register or they can just come in, and that's depending if you have an outward-facing meeting where you're looking to know exactly who's coming and maybe capture their email address and be able to communicate with them in some other way if it's not, say, your team members. So you can force registration should you choose to. You can also set up a meeting password just to add a little extra privacy. How people enter the meeting can be a little bit raucous if you're not careful. If you say book a team meeting every week, but people come in a little bit late, like people do in regular meetings, you can do things like make sure that they're muted on entry and whether or not they have their video turned on or off when they enter. You can set those standards up before you even launch the meeting. You can allow people to join the meeting before the host joins the meeting, so they can be kind of in a waiting room. And you can also set up an official waiting room where people are waiting, and then you have to give them permission to enter the room, which is great if you're doing something like a training where you've got your students that are waiting there, and then the instructor is going to be waiting until they finally bring the person in. You can set up so only authenticated users can join in, and you can also, as I mentioned with April, you can record the meetings either automatically or you can record them manually. So you can set all of these parameters up in advance or as a default for all of your meetings. So it gives you a lot more control. You can see the difference between a Zoom and some of the free packages in the fact of all of this sophisticated organization and infrastructure that you can put in place for meetings. And of course, that's up a step when you're doing webinars. Oh, there are many other personal and small team meeting tools that we could talk about, not the least of which is Skype, which I imagine most of you have used. But you get the idea between free and paid, the services that we get with our online meeting tools, but with the ones that we've looked at up to now. So now I want to step it up a little bit and talk about doing presentations and doing summits, doing larger, like replacing actual conferences, because we can scale all the way to that point. Now for presentations, what we're doing here right now, the webinar tools that we're using, in this particular case we're using Demio, we've used other tools in the past, are the perfect tool for delivering presentations to large groups. And again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that right now, but we've got some great tutorials in our Webinar Wednesday archives for those of you who are patrons. Where we talk about how we do webinars and the anatomy of a successful webinar. In fact, we've got a mini course which we will link to, and we will drop a link to and send to you in the replay as well, where we walk through all of the different hallmarks of creating a successful webinar, which is really just a large scale presentation done online. So again, we'll fast forward past that right now, and we'll talk about what I think is going to be maybe the hottest product this year, and that is the virtual summit product, where we replace physical conferences with online summits. Now, they've been done for a while in a variety of different qualities. People can just use webinar tools and they can schedule them and manually set up all of the organization themselves, and a lot of people have done that. But now we see several companies that are actually giving you the entire kit to do online summits through the marketing and management and presentation. And I'm just going to show you a few of them and give you an idea of the costs, because we all wonder how much it costs, don't we? So we've got here, this first one is called Hey Summit. And this one takes the heavy lifting out of summit organizations. Get your message in front of a global audience. And as usual, they've all got a list of all of the different people who've used them. So what this does, if we take a look kind of down at the bottom, is they take care of all of the details. They take care of managing your speakers, onboarding them. There's like a green room that the speakers come into and a host, so that all of the videos are automatically recorded. And there's an infrastructure and architecture to manage all of the content that's going into the summit. As well, of course, there's a user side where they can collect money and collect payments, collect email addresses, give people authorization to log in, and actually deliver the webinar itself. So it also integrates with the tools that you would expect, such as Wistia or YouTube if you're going to be streaming in video. In this case, Big Marker is another webinar application that it interfaces with. But what I was curious about was, what does it cost to put these things on? Because you can imagine you've got marketing costs and you've got organizational costs. Well, this is what the tool gives you. They give you in their basic package for $29 a month. You can have up to 2,000 attendees at your summit, one host, one event at a time, and the transaction fee is how much they're charging, how much their take is when they register people for you, and you can't have any additional team members. So that's a pretty basic. That's like a very simple webinar package. The professional sounds like it might be a little bit more appealing. You can have up to 5 hosts, which is good, up to 7,500 attendees, a lot better if you're doing a web summit, I imagine. 3 active events. They take a far smaller cut of your ticket price, and you can have 2 team members who are helping to manage it. It includes custom domain, allowing you to customize the theme, allow you to record your summit and make them evergreen so that people can watch the replays, which I think would be essential. And then also to have affiliates so that you can have other people sell it for you. And then for $249 a month, you can have unlimited hosts. This one sounds like what most of us would probably be going for if we were actually doing webinar summits. 20,000 attendees, 10 events, 0 transaction fees, unlimited team members. That's what you're going to be looking for. Evergreen summits, priority support, and API access. So you imagine you can tie it directly in with your CRM, etc. So for as little as, say, $250 a month, you could have a package that would allow you to host an entire massive summit with, unlimited, up to 20,000 attendees. That's a pretty substantial audience. I can't imagine putting one together that's that big, but that gives you an idea of what these virtual summits can do. And this Hey Summit is just one of several different packages. I got it. In Expo is another one of the virtual platforms that does a very similar type of arrangement to allow you virtual summits. And a third company which we found called Virtual Summit Software has virtual summits as well. So I believe that this year, with all of the restricted travel and the changes in so many of the conferences, that we're going to see a lot of existing conferences making the switch, converting their summits into their conferences into virtual summits, and still trying to deliver the main content and the main value to their community. And using tools like this will be the way that many of them will go about actually delivering that. And for those of us who are entrepreneurial, getting our handle and getting skills in managing these types of meetings and becoming more skilled in either hosting or delivering online meetings, all the way up to online presentations and trainings and webinars, all of that becomes, I think, an increasingly valuable skill set. As for the time being, at least, we are going to be face-to-face a little less often. So this opened the door for this conversation today about online meetings through to online summits. Now I'm looking forward to the Q&A where we can dive into it a little bit deeper. There we have it. That was the everybody noticed a little bit of the technical issues that we had. So let me explain, just as people worried about it. We pre-record the demo, and I use a screencasting tool. I was using ScreenFlow in this particular case to pre-record that demo. Now, because of the way resources are allocated, sometimes it works when you try and record a live stream or a conference, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's just unintended consequences. So the echo that came from the very first demo, that was kind of the unintended consequence. The fact that April's audio didn't come through in the Zoom call was because the screencasting's audio recorder, took precedence over the audio feed from Zoom. So even though I could hear her, it wasn't patched through internally in the computer. And that was something that maybe I could have figured out if I was doing it on a regular basis. But since this was a one-off and I'd woken April up from her nap and she probably wanted to get back to the nap, I wasn't going to, after when I discovered it, when I started editing it, call her up and say, we have to do it again. So we just did the best that we could. But you got the idea. Sorry?
I said I would have, though.
Yeah, I know you would have. Of course you would have. But I didn't want to put you through that. But the education was still the same. We got the idea of how the different tools worked. We talked about the different aspects of it and where they work. And so many of us use Zoom on an ongoing basis. It amazes me whenever we show a product like Zoom that so many of us use, how often we forget that there are different features within it, how seldom we dive into it. Like, for example, we use it every day, and I had to say, is there a whiteboard? Is there a whiteboard? And I even had to look for where the virtual background is, because it's something that we never use, but it's cool to know. Right. And for the people that were criticizing our implementation of the keyed out background, that's because we didn't want to set up our green screens behind just for the one call. If you do a lot of calls with green screen, you set up that way and you leave it permanently set up that way as well.
And I think one of the things people didn't hear what I was saying in that Zoom piece is when you were showing the whiteboard was that you actually, when you're doing a presentation or you're showing somebody stuff online, you can actually use the whole kind of clipboard of highlighting things, using a pointer, all of that in Zoom as well, which falls under that chalkboard category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are some extra tools, and there are also some mechanisms. If you have regular team meetings, asking people to turn on their video means they're actually paying attention and not doing something else. And there are other kind of presence type things that are benefits of using the technology as well. But from the whereby, and somebody said it should be pronounced whereby. I don't know. I don't know which one it is. But it's the simplest and easiest tool on the planet, I think, to use. You just sign up, log in, and it just works all the way. And Zoom seems to have become the standard. As a matter of fact, with all of this coronavirus impact on the stock market, communications companies like Zoom's are the only sector of the stock market that has been increasing in value. I think somebody commented that they invested in it and it's actually gone up, whereas the rest of their portfolio is plummeting. So the world is certainly recognizing that this is going to be more relevant. Now, it'll be interesting to see if bandwidth and other things need to be upgraded, or if we're going to see a degradation in service as far as streaming service taking advantage of the available bandwidth, or if our systems are robust enough to handle the increased traffic, which will happen over the next couple of months as well. So a quick, let me just take care of a couple of details before we get into the Q&A and bring Patty on, because Patty is going to talk to us about the high end, the virtual conferences. I'm curious if any of you attended or even run any virtual conferences. Maybe you can drop some notes in the chat there as well. So the replay for this will be sent out tomorrow. This is live. We deliver these webinar Wednesdays every week live, we make them available to our community for 3 days from the time that we broadcast it. So you can come back in, you can watch the replay, you can share it with others. After 3 days, we take each of these webinars and we archive them in our Webinar Wednesday archives, where they are there for the benefit of our patrons at Patreon. If you drop by patreon.com/Dottotech, you can see that this channel is supported by the generosity of you folks who are here, who are our patrons. And I know there's a lot of you on the call. We appreciate your ongoing support ever so much. But the perks that you get for supporting us is, A, we're able to create this content on an ongoing basis. The other perk is you have access to this growing library of webinars. This is our 121st or 122nd or
122nd.
122nd Webinar Wednesday. And so they're all available to you. Next week on Webinar Wednesday, we're going to be taking a look back at what's new in the world of Notion, the productivity app that's captured many of our imagination. It's not really an Evernote alternative. We thought it would be at one point, but it's really a productivity app of its own design now. But Francesco D'Alessio, who is our Notion expert, will be joining us, and we'll be taking a look at what is new in Notion. So I encourage you to keep your eye on your email and join us next week for what is new in Notion. And that's it. I've talked about Patreon. I've talked about Notion. Let's get into the Q&A. But before we get into the Q&A, we'll bring him on and we'll incorporate him with us. I've got to find Patty. I got to look him up here. I know how to do this. We're still getting used to.
All right.
There he is. So Patty, I am going to invite you in to the conference. So it'll take Patty a few seconds to go through the enrollment situation. Oh, almost no time whatsoever. He was ready to go like a shot.
Hey, Patty.
Hey, how are we doing, everyone?
Good.
How are you?
Where are you from?
Good. I'm originally from the UK. I'm from London, but I live here in Vancouver, Canada. So when I get a chance to get outside, it's a beautiful day today. So
it is a beautiful day.
finally for once. But hey,
so
everyone,
Patty's
Jack, good to see you.
Patty's an old buddy of ours. He used to be with Thinkific, which is a close partner of Dottotech. He's since struck out on his own. And one of the things that Patty does is he coaches two areas. One area he coaches people and helps companies with their affiliate programs. He's been a guest before, and he really understands affiliate marketing and affiliate programs, that management programs. But Patty's also, when he was at Thinkific, run several virtual summits. And since you've struck out on your own, you've got a couple of consulting contracts, I think, to help companies organize virtual conference. I got to ask you, Patty, is this like, have you decided to pivot a bit? Is this your growth market now?
It could well be. Business is booming. The last couple of weeks, people are messaging me a lot saying, "Hey, how can I run a virtual summit? Or I heard you've done all the stuff over at Thinkific. Can you show me how to do that?" So it's definitely in demand. There was an event. I can't name the event right now, but there was an event that I was going to go to in a couple of months from now, and they already have like a couple of thousand people, and that's getting canned, and that's going to go the way of the virtual summits. So they're trying to, this particular conference, they're trying to figure out, is there something they could do to do like a virtual summit right now, conference that's in the lead up to the postponed live thing that's going to be happening in September. So yeah, it's great. Like it's great, like for me in terms of business, but I think it's going to show like there's a lot of value from virtual summits. And there was a comment that I spotted in the chat earlier saying that networking doesn't necessarily replace like the networking element, but I think if you could build a really good community around your summit, so something that Dr. Kerry Rose at the Online Course Success Summit, who I've been sort of helping with recently, and they've just launched theirs. They've got a really great Facebook group, so they're using the Facebook group as a way to build that community and that networking. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things you could do.
So let's talk quickly just about the physical delivery mechanisms for the conferences. So now, do the online conferencing tools that we're looking at, do they include the actual delivery, or are they mainly a kind of an administrative management back end where you manage what people who have signed up have access to which sessions? Or is it like, does it replace the GoToWebinar, the Webinar Jam, the Demio, and replace the entire package? Or do you still have to have some sort of a streaming service, a Zoom, to deliver your content?
Yeah, so the majority, it's like an administrative toolbox. So the conferences are usually recorded, like most of the videos that I see get recorded on Zoom, they then get downloaded, transcribed, and then re-uploaded into whatever the technology is. But for what I see, Hey Summit and a couple of the others like Virtual Summits and guys like that, they will have the ability to link directly to Zoom. So I saw Hey Summit had that, and that product's changed quite a lot over the last 2 years.
And really, most of these virtual summits are designed to be live and evergreen at the same time. Like you record the webinar, you record the presentation, and then it automatically transfers into an evergreen delivery. Correct? Yes, and
you've got the option you do have the option of delivering it live as well. So if you want to, it really comes down to how you want to communicate this summit to people, because some people like doing the live sessions over a set course of days. So everyone jumps in at like 9 a.m. and then maybe there's like a YouTube live link that's fed into, let's say, Hey Summit, for example, and then that's delivered, and then that content is delivered there. So not too dissimilar to this. Or again, like the pre-recording, for me personally, the pre-recorded sessions are better. And that's purely from a management perspective, because you can spend I would say like really 6-7 weeks is the absolute bare minimum to get like a summit really set up to run it well. Like you could arguably go to Hey Summit, get it out the box straight away, but there's a lot more around it in terms of like recruiting speakers, setting setting the topics and making sure people get everything done on time, because that's another thing as well. Managing personalities like Steve is pretty tough. That's for sure.
Like herding cats. Well, I've been the guest on multiple of these summits. Are you drinking wine?
Oh, no, it's a coffee.
Good for you.
Okay.
Coffee cup. Oh, that looks good.
Wine. Totally threw you under the bus. It's like it's 1:40. Oh, I guess it's okay. It's 1:47 in the afternoon. So I've been a guest on multiple of these different virtual summits, and the experience for the presenters can differ vastly. I can remember back in the early days, we used to do them in WebEx, and it was a nightmare as a presenter, because you'd have your slides and you'd just be doing audio, and the technical setup, you were always on tenterhooks because you never knew if everything was going to fall into place for the delivery, and you had absolutely no feedback because it didn't even have chat happening. So you didn't know at all whether or not you were just speaking into a vacuum. If you'd been dropped offline, there was no feedback, and I found it to be a disconnected presentation. It's hard to present with passion when you're not connected to your audience. But you can still do a lot of these live ones, although it's probably better now, the fact that you probably see their video feed, etc. But the most popular way is that the presenters pre-record their presentation, much like our little demos that we do here, and then they're delivered on schedule in. But we lose something with that, don't we, Patty?
Yeah, you lose the spontaneity. You lose this type of rich conversation, and the beauty of things going live, and the live chat as well. That's why, if I look at what Thinkific done with their Amplify Summit just before I left, they had some elements that were pre-recorded and then some elements that were live as well baked into it. So it's a great way of mixing up a little bit and enhancing the experience.
And if you think about, if you're delivering a live summit of some sort, you are going to, or a web summit, you are going to lose what I think might be 60 to 70% of the value of any conference, which is the personal networking. And it's, you know, regardless of everything else that you put in place as far as a forum online and stuff, there's still nothing quite like face-to-face seeing a person
100%.
and, you know, being able to that personal interaction. So since that is lost, if you also lose the energy of the chat, which right now as it's going along, I'm seeing comments, and every time I see a little blip, 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 it's like your audience is leaning forward because they're engaged. Whether or not they're saying good things or bad things, it's engaged, and it pours that energy into the conference. If you lose that as well, it's not much different, I think, than, you know, just developing an online course and then just delivering it. Really. So you've got to find ways to create that engagement. That's probably the bottom line for these virtual summits.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, there's a lot of courses that are being done now. Of course, there's a lot of summits now where it is just pretty much, like I said, it's an online course. It's just a way of delivering another online course, or even like a YouTube playlist, like that you can be as like as sort of basic as that. So, you know, Steve hit the nail on the head. You know, you've got to deliver a great experience, and if that is by doing more in the community, doing more emails, doing more live chats, I tend to find that doing summary, so having like summaries of the days. So for example, you could have all the lessons, you could have all the sessions, and then at the end you could have a day one wrap up where, you know, Steve and everyone and April and everyone else that comes in could all give their 2 cents on what they thought. Now they've had maybe time to reflect on their videos. But again, all that comes down to as well is like, how much work do you want each of the speakers to do? Because that's a huge thing to consider as well, because people's time with summits is critical to manage.
But let's look at the equation. I'm not flying. I'm not staying in a hotel. I don't have all that travel. So asking me to spend a couple of extra hours to be there live in chat really isn't that much of a hardship.
No, it's definitely not. And that's why when you go out and find the speakers, it's important to understand like what their schedules are looking like over the next 3, 6, 9, even 12 months, depending on who you're dealing with. Someone like Steve, for example, when Steve would participate on the Thinkific summits, we would probably give him around I'd probably say about 10 weeks notice, 12 weeks notice. Just say, hey Steve, we're thinking of doing a summit. We want you to talk about X, Y, and Z. Just keep your eyes open for a document that's going to come over.
Yeah. And I always got them to you within a day before they were due.
Pretty much. Let's go. always on time.
Can I ask a question? In your virtual summits, is there like a perfect, not a perfect, but a certain number that you would not go over in terms of management? Because obviously there's a lot of moving pieces, but even just managing that in the tool, do you have a recommended number to cap at, or maybe your highest number and you're like, after that it was overwhelming?
Is that for speakers?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. We had the online course success summit last year. I think we had 60 speakers, and even with me carrying the Sean, taking care of that, and I was on the Thinkific side at that time. It was it was pretty intense. There was a lot to do. So then I think this year we stripped it back. I think we got it down to about 30. So the people that are speaking, there's a real considered approach of the value that's being delivered on each topic. So always start with what's the number one takeaways you want the audience of the virtual summit to get.
Sure.
And then that's where you can start piece. So you have the outcomes, and then piece together your speakers, then piece together your sponsors, and then work your way up that way.
One last question. Do you edit those videos? Oh, sorry. Do you edit those videos for them, or you just keep them as they are?
It depends. We can let the speakers edit their own videos if they want. If they say, we need to edit something here and we need to drop it back, and we'll drop it over by this time, then that's fine. Especially if they want to have a lead magnet or something of that nature coming up at the bottom. Most of the time, if it's done on an interview basis, then they're generally not edited out. What I find is the ones where they've just delivered down the camera saying, hey, it's Paddy McGill, and I'm going to show you how to create a virtual summit. They're the ones that tend to have a little bit more editing as well.
All right, great. And I don't have your link. People are asking how to get in touch with you. I saw your email, but do you have a website? It'd be great if you don't mind putting it in the chat so people have it.
I'm absolutely the worst is, so since I started consulting, it got busy really quick. So I've
Oh,
not
good,
even
that's
finished
good.
my own websites, which is great, but it's hard for me to get in. People get in touch. So all I'd say is if you just go to LinkedIn and then just search the word partnerpreneur, and I'll get that in there. And then I will be happy to connect with people. Feel free to drop me an email as well, partnerpreneur@gmail.com.
So
And,
type that in the chat for us,
help.
Patty.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna send you back. We're nearly at the hour mark, so I want to get to some of the questions. But Patty,
That
thanks
was
so much.
great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the help, Patty.
Thanks so much.
We'll talk real soon, buddy.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now. Okay, so I turned me
Bye,
off.
Steve.
I tried to boot Patty out, and I ended up booting myself off. There we go.
See you later.
Okay, there we go.
That was great.
Good stuff. So let's rapid fire through the questions as quick as we can.
Okay.
We've got 19, so we'll do as many as we can. I think we should be able to get through them all.
All right. Do you know about the app Crisp? It eliminates all the background noise on both sides of a Zoom or conference call. I have parrots and it's been a lifesaver. I think that's a hint. You might have heard my dogs barking upstairs.
No, the concern with that is that's a type of noise gating tool, and sometimes what it'll do is it'll clip the front end and back end of your conversations. But I haven't tried it. But if it works for you and it saved your bacon, then it's a good one. Thanks for sharing that.
All right. Nope, I already answered this one. Let's see.
We can record webinars in Demio. We do, and I actually record all of my webinars while at the same time. So Demio, here's the thing about recording a webinar like Demio. Demio currently only records the video screens. It doesn't record the chat. So I actually record it as a screencast at the same time. That's what I send out to you as the screencast recording. One of the reasons that we're going with Demio now is Demio is adding the capability to record the entire webinar, including the chat, which adds so much more value when we send out the replay. So that's coming, but currently you can automatically only record the screen, the videos. So we actually do a screencast recording to make sure that we have the chat in.
Okay. How does Zoom rooms compare to virtual conferences?
Well, Zoom rooms could, I mean, it's like they could be a part of a virtual conference quite comfortably. And a lot of the conference software will allow you to use your Zoom account to deliver the streaming content. The virtual conference software is the whole package, which organizes the schedule. It'll probably have a landing page where you just click on a link to watch that particular session, as opposed to having to go to your email and go into a link with registration. So it's going to have those sorts of extra pieces, but the Zoom could be the actual content delivery mechanism.
All right. What do you recommend if all I want is a better looking professional, Skype or FaceTime?
Oh, just use Skype or FaceTime. I mean, if you're happy with that, then it comes down to making sure you have good equipment, a good quality microphone, a good camera, and good lighting. Somebody was asking earlier about my camera and why it looked good and stuff. I have big windows here that give me nice natural light. And when that's not available, I have good lighting set up permanently here. We've got a good quality professional microphone. And that's the biggest issue as far as creating good quality streaming. And putting that investment in will benefit you in Skype, it'll benefit you in FaceTime, or any of the conferencing tools we're talking about.
All right. What's the difference between something like Webinar Jam and Zoom?
So we talk about this a lot in our course on the anatomy of a successful webinar. The webinar applications are all built from the ground up for a particular purpose. Webinar Jam was built as a webinar tool for social marketing webinars, for sales webinars. So it's got all of this terrific integration into your CRM, into say Infusionsoft, and it's got the ability to do calls to action and actually sell product right within the webinar. Demio has some similar features built into it, but Zoom was built from the beginning as a meeting and a conferencing tool. So it's got more tools to help you with engagement and having conversations and manage a small group and interact with a small group. So that's the biggest difference. If your main purpose is a broadcast webinar where you're doing sales and you want interaction, but that's not the number one goal, then a tool like Webinar Jam or Demio is perfect. If your main purpose is having a conversation or teaching, then Zoom is a better choice.
All right. Why not host in YouTube?
Well, YouTube's public, so you're not gating and you're not capturing people's email addresses as they come in. So with a lot of these tools, we want to make sure that we're having people register and we're able to follow up with email sequences, which is the way we do this webinar. So that's one reason. You could certainly do the streaming through YouTube Live, and a lot of people do that. It works quite well. We were in a conference the other day with Marie Forleo where she was using YouTube Live as the main distribution platform. But it's, again, the administrative surround that you're most concerned with and being able to communicate with people. The challenge with YouTube is you don't know who's watching. You don't know who's in there. So it's being so you're throwing a lot of energy out there, and hopefully you're having good retention and good interaction, but you don't necessarily know. With these tools, you get incredible analytics back of the actual people who were on with you, how long they were on, when they dropped off. You have their email address to communicate with them in the future. So you've got some additional features that are built in when you use one of these packages.
All right. What's the best meeting platform for both computer login and call-in? I've had some people with unreliable internet. Fortunately, that happens a lot.
Zoom and Skype both have pretty good POTS service, or plain old telephone service. I know that Zoom has the ability to be able to create really nice rooms, really nice call-in, and so does, for that matter, GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. Not my favorite tool, but they do have the ability to have those landline call-ins at the same as well.
Someone said something about using a green screen for Zoom. Where, when, and why would you use it?
Okay, so you saw us put the virtual background behind. The virtual background works terribly with busy backgrounds like this. If you have a solid color like a green screen behind you, you can do a really nice job of a virtual background, making it look like you're in a nice office environment or on the beach somewhere or in space. So that's where you'd want to use it. Some people use it for branding. They put their company logo behind and they add all that extra branding. And so the green screen also, some people have really messy offices, so they don't want people to see the background of their office, so that green screen then blocks everything out as well. Those are the places you'd want to use a green screen. And there's some really nice pop-up green screens that are fairly inexpensive and easy to set up. Used to be we had to set up piping and stretch the green screen and do a lot of work, but we've got these collapsible green screens now that pop up and they're terrific.
What webcam are you using, inbuilt or USB?
I use a Logitech Brio, their high definition camera, as my main camera. So it's not built in. It's a Logitech Brio, but Logitech C920 is still a terrific option.
All right. Just to let you know, it is the top of the hour.
Oh,
we do have
so
some more
anybody that has to go, they're going to go. Before they do though, April, we've got some new. We've got Anna Manuel and Joseph. Joseph Horner, new patrons. Thank you so much. You'll be getting information from us. But welcome aboard. We are so thrilled to see you join us. Welcome aboard. All right. And everybody else that has to go, next week, keep your eye. We've got Francesco D'Alessio. Nobody knows more about Notion than Francesco. So I look forward to you joining us next week. The following week, we're going to be doing online payment systems. I'm very excited about that.
Oh, that's exciting. We also have our live stream, too, coming up on Facebook.
Yes, on Saturday morning, check your email. We'll be doing live streaming that. It will be doing that in the talking about online business, and it's the Gray Matters Unscripted. So it's talking about online business primarily for baby boomers and Gen Xers, but that's Saturday morning coming up.
All right. Let's see. Any idea how many people can join the free Zoom call?
Yes, the free Zoom calls are 100 people, and you're limited to 40 minutes. By the way, we'll continue answering questions here for about 10 or so minutes or until we're through. So for people that are leaving right away.
And it does cut you off at 40 minutes, like literally.
Yeah, it just does it. Yeah.
It does, yeah.
And the package that we use is 150 people, and it's unlimited.
Right. I'd like to know the preference for webinar as affordable and easy as Zoom.
So choosing a webinar tool is, you're never going to be really thrilled when you choose a webinar package. They all have a certain number of warts, and they all are at the mercy of bandwidth and relays and repeaters and all sorts of internet vagaries. So even today, we've had a terrific connection for the most part for Demio, but some people have had a poor feed. Some people have had a poor feed from me, or some people had a poor feed from April, or the audio drops out. And Demio is an exceptional package. So it's hard to say which is the best one. We've used Webinar Jam, which I think is outstanding for online marketers. For people who do regular webinars like this, like ours, that are looking for, that do high volume, since we do a lot of webinars, Demio has proven to be a joy to use because of its reliability and ease of setup. It probably saves me 10 to 15 minutes each week setting up the webinars in Demio. They've got a very elegant enrollment system, and we're happy with all of the additional functionality. But there are other great tools out there as well that are well worth considering. But the biggest difference you're going to choose is between a conferencing tool that's designed for training and for interaction, which is Zoom, or a GoToMeeting would be your, or a GoToWebinar would be your primary choice, or a presentation style webinar package, which Demio, Zoom, Big Marker, several of the others are in that space.
All right.
And as far as ease of use goes, I just want to say none of them are hard to use, and it's just a small investment of time to make them so that you know them intimately and you kind of figure out the subtleties of them. So after a couple of webinars, you've got them all figured out. None of them are hard to use, but none of them are, and even Zoom itself is not easy to use right out of the gate. It takes you a little bit of time to get used to it all. That's why, because you use it, you think it's easy to use.
How does Wherebee make any money?
Their free service is just an introduction. It's only 4 people. Whereas their paid service gives you many more features and allows more people to be conferenced in.
All right. Michael has a question about replay video. I'm doing live stream classes. Often the presenter will be one window and a slide deck on the other. With Zoom, it all looks great on the live stream, but the video replay is 90% slide deck and 10% presenter in a tiny pop-up window.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear about services for live streaming that would give more options for how the replay looks.
So there's 2 things. One is if you really get into Zoom granularly, you can avoid that by pinning the slide video and making sure that's large when you're delivering your slides. So there's a way to actually do that. The other aspect is you can use other tools. There's other tools that do a better job of incorporating slides within it. When we're doing slideshows, we like to use our live streaming tool, Ecamm Live, because I can set up Ecamm Live. Now that's on a Mac only, but on Ecamm Live, I have multiple sources and it's a switching app, so that I can have my video in one window and I can have my feed from my iPad or my iOS device or another screen from my computer as another source. And I can have them running side by side. Now, the cool thing with the tool like Ecamm Live is even if you still want to deliver your content over Zoom, you can use Ecamm Live as a virtual camera. This is very cool. So when you go into Zoom and you start your session, rather than choosing your webcam, you choose your Ecamm Live camera as the camera that's feeding into your Zoom window. And then all of the switching you do of sharing of screens and putting your slides up, that is then passed through into Zoom. So you can do all of that elaborate switching and have much higher production values by using a virtual camera with Ecamm Live and pushing it through into Zoom. Now I realize that might seem a little geeky, but it works.
All right. When it comes to simple face-to-face, why not just use FaceTime or Hangouts?
Well, FaceTime is only going to work if both sides of the equation have iOS. And Hangouts, I got to tell you the truth, is one of the least approachable conferencing applications there is. Google has done a terrible job of building the Access interface, of knowing where you're supposed to click and how you share the links with Hangouts. It works quite well within the Google ecosystem. If you're using the Google Office suite, then Hangouts is integrated right there within Gmail and within your other tools. But if you're not part of that ecosystem, logging into a Hangout is not, I don't find it to be second nature. I think they've done, and of course their documentation sucks just terribly. So that's the reason that I don't gravitate towards those, and I would gravitate much more quickly towards a Skype or others. But the bottom line is, you could use any of these tools. We're just talking about the functionality and learning and opening people's eyes to what they can do with the tools. You could choose any tool, and if you're happy with it and your community's happy with it, then it works.
All right. It looks like Lisa has a question. And what's Whereby for?
If you already use Zoom Pro, there's no reason.
Yeah.
No. It doesn't really do anything for you if you already are using, if you're already paying for Zoom. And so that's why I hadn't used it in a year, because we use Zoom. It might be useful if you happen to be in a place where you don't have access to your Zoom account. Say you're on another computer and you're at a friend's house and you want to start a conference and you don't really want to log into your Zoom account. Then if you know that Whereby is there, you can always jump into your Whereby room and you can share it with others if you're on if you don't happen to be home. So it would work from that perspective. But from a practical perspective, it's not going to do anything for you that Zoom doesn't. It's just a free option for people who don't use Zoom that might want to just be dipping their toe in the market and get started.
So interesting question here. Do you still use Thinkific to deliver pre-recorded courses, or have you found something better?
Yes, absolutely. For pre-recorded courses, Thinkific is the way that I go. We love Thinkific, and it is the perfect tool. We're actually exploring a membership tool, which is outside of Thinkific for some other purposes. But if I'm just thinking about doing online courses and delivering those courses and pre-recording videos and then using them for my courses, Thinkific is a perfect choice.
All right. And I think that is a wrap.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, folks. We appreciate you spending the time. Keep your eye open for the email tomorrow. Thanks to Patty McGill for jumping in and talking to us a little bit about the world of online conferences. I guess we're just going to have to see each other online for a little while. I've got one conference coming up that I don't, they sent us an email saying that it's still going on, but I don't know whether they're going to be in control of that. That's not for a couple of months. But if not, hey, at least we have each other here online, and we can keep learning, we can keep talking, we can keep laughing occasionally, and that's a good thing for us all. April,
Thanks
stay
for coming
safe.
today.
Good job on your setup. People love your nice clean office in the background and your new microphone there and all that kind of stuff. It looks so good, so professional.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Can you
folks,
hear me?
till next week.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.